talking now? Okay. I guess it's my time to talk. I need to, your school of teaching or speaking, whatever they say, the one thing you don't want to do is apologize. So I'm going to break that rule and I'm going to apologize. Glenn and I have been married a little over 61 years. And so this year for Christmas, we gave each other a cold. She got it about 7 o'clock, or she got it yesterday and she gave it to me about 7 o'clock. So, Neil, I was going to call you, but it was 9 o'clock. And okay, here we go. Last Sunday of 2025, hard to believe, but they whipped by. So we're going to start out with our usual quiz. This is an old one. Which soldier is bigger, taller, stronger? They're all the same size. Just a matter of perspectives. So what does that have to do with Bible lesson? Well, in 2 Corinthians, Paul tells the church at Corinth, we don't dare put ourselves in the same class with those who think they are so important. We don't compare ourselves to them. They use themselves to measure themselves. And they judge themselves by what they themselves are. And he wraps it up by saying, this shows that they know nothing. So we shouldn't even look at other people for any kind of comparison. There's always someone richer, someone poorer, someone taller, someone shorter. There is no need to compare ourselves to any earthly being. We need to keep our eye on God. Every week we've been kind of pulling a New Testament scripture to fit into our Old Testament study of the book of Job. A couple weeks ago we looked at Romans, where it talked about learning from these things that were written in the past, and then we gather patience and encouragement from studying them, which is true. And last week we looked at Ephesians, it's clouding up. Ecclesiastics, and I love this because, like comparing ourselves to somebody else, the inspired writer says, I also saw other things in this life that were not fair. The fastest runner does not always win the race. The strongest soldier does not always win the battle. Wise people don't always get the food. Smart people don't always get the wealth. Educated people don't always get the praise they deserve. When the time comes, bad things can happen to anyone. So that certainly sums up what we're looking at Job. Let's jump in a quick review of Job. Very first verse, the writer tells us who Job is. There was a man named Job. He lived in a country called Uz. He was a good, honest man. He respected God and refused to do evil. Kind of sums it up. Wouldn't that be nice to put on the front of your door? Here lives a good man, or here lives a good man, honest man. In fact, even God, in verse 8, says roughly the same thing. When he talks to Satan, he says, have you noticed my servant Job? There's no one. There is no one on earth like him. He is a good, faithful man. He respects God and refuses to do evil. Well, Of course, Satan didn't comprehend this. In fact, Satan can't comprehend an individual or intentions of an individual that are strictly good. He's a what's in it for me type of person. He doesn't believe that somebody can do the right thing just because it's the right thing. And certainly, looking at Job, he didn't believe it. So, even after Satan was given permission and destroyed all the material wealth that Job had, the Lord came back and said, then the Lord said to Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He's a good, faithful man. He respects God and refuses to do evil, and he is still faithful. Even though you asked me to let you destroy without reason everything he has. So Satan should have given up at that point. But Satan never gives up. Remember one of the lines that God repeats in the first couple of chapters when Satan appears at this meeting, heavenly meeting. God asked him where has he been, and he said he's been here or there. And in the New Testament we read that Satan is always prowling around, looking for those that he can intercept between followers of God. So Satan was not willing to accept that Job was faithful to God and still was. In fact, he said that skin for skin, if you get down to the nitty-gritty and you face someone with survival, personal survival, he's going to look you in the eye and turn his back on you. Satan tells him, a man will give anything he has to protect himself. I swear, if you attack, and notice that Satan wants God to attack. He wants to lay off the blame on God. He said, if you attack his flesh and bones, he will curse you to your face. So the Lord said, all right, Job is in your hands, but you're not allowed to kill him. So Satan left. So he left the meeting, and with the Lord gave Job, he left the meeting with the Lord and gave Job painful sores all over his body from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. And Job sat in a pile of ashes where he was mourning and used a piece of broken pottery to scrape his sore. Where did he come up with a broken pottery? Well, it's the dump where trash is thrown, and that's where Job was. He went to a place that was desolate, nothing but trash, and used the broken pottery to scrape. But much to Satan's dismay, Job is not alone. In verse 12 of the second chapter, and we talked about in the first couple weeks that the book of Job is broken down into a couple of different parts. There's 42 chapters, and the first couple of chapters are kind of a prose. They tell a story. And halfway through the second chapter, it changes to poetry. In fact, this is the first, if you look at the outline of the Bible, this is the first book that is grouped in a section referred to as poetry. And so the rest of the book, until you get to the last chapter, is in Hebrew poetry. But translating it kind of spoils some of the poetry, so we're going to kind of look at it without reference to all the different aspects of the poetry. In fact, for those that weren't here for the first couple weeks, I'm using a translation called the easy to read version, and I'm using it for a purpose. I would like you to look at your own translations, whether you're looking at New International or New King James, English Standard, whatever. There are some differences, but we'll kind of pick on some of those, and if you see something that makes a difference in your understanding, raise your hand and we'll talk about it. So here in the 12th chapter, or 12th verse of the second chapter, Job has some of his friends, but his friends they came from far away. They didn't even recognize him when they saw him at first at a distance. They began to cry loudly and tear their clothes and threw dirt in the air over their heads to show how sad they were. Then they sat on the ground with Job 7 days and 7 nights and didn't say anything because they saw that he was in great pain. And this is what we expect out of friends. They came to give us comfort. And they came to, let us know that we weren't alone. And these 7 days and 7 nights were probably exceedingly difficult for not only Job, but for his friends, because he was to the point that they didn't even recognize him. So it has to be quite a difference. Excuse me. Job's first friend, Eliphaz, indicates that he was probably the oldest and probably the spokesman for the group. And he starts out very good. I mean, he sounds like a friend and says, I must say something. Would it upset you if I speak? Job, you have taught many people. You have encouraged those who are ready to quit, and your words help those who are ready to fall. You gave strength to those who could not stand by themselves. That's a pretty good, testimonial to his friend. He goes on, but now trouble comes to you and you are discouraged. Trouble hits you and you're upset. You were the encourager. Now that you've got a problem, it's more than you can handle. So, just how bad was his trouble? We know what he lost his children, he lost his wealth, now he's lost his health. But to what degree does that affect? I mean, how would it affect you? It's kind of hard to say. Let's jump ahead a couple chapters here. If losing all your possessions, his family, the support of his wife, remember his wife standing by him, curse God and die. Well, let's go ahead and look at chapter 29 in the book of Job. This is we know that the first response that Job had to his friends was he wanted to curse the day he was born. He wasn't suicidal. He was just talking about why was I even born? Even wicked people, he said, are dead and they're resting. I'm in torment and I can't rest. Chapter 29 starts like this. Job continued to speak. I wish my life could be the same as it was a few months ago. Now, some of your versions may say months of old. I think the New King James says in months past. In the easy to read version, this kind of gives a feeling that this just took place over a few months. We don't know how long Job has been suffering. But he goes on and he says, when God watched over and cared for me, God's light shined above me so I could walk through the darkness. I wish for the days when I was successful, when I enjoyed God's friendship and blessing in my home. God all-powerful was still with me then, and my children were all around me. Life was so good that I washed my feet in cream and had plenty of the finest oils. Life was good. He goes on. Those were the days when I went to the city gate and sat in the public meeting of the elders. When the young men saw me coming, they stepped out of my way. And the old men stood up to show their respect to me. The leaders of the people stopped talking and put their hands over their mouths. Even the most important leaders were quiet, as if their tongues were stuck to the roof of their mouth. All who heard me say good things about me. Those who saw what I did praised me because I helped the poor when they cried out. I helped the orphans who had no one to care for them. People who were dying asked God to bless me. My help brought joy to the widows in need. Right living was my clothing. Fairness was my robe and turban. I was like eyes for the blind, like feet for the crippled. I was like a father to the poor. I helped people I didn't even know win their cases in court. I stopped evil people from abusing their power and saved innocent people from them. I always thought I would live a long life, growing old with my family around me. Don't we all think that? He goes on and says, I was like a healthy plant with roots that had plenty of water and branches that were wet with dew. I thought each new day would bring more honor and be full of new possibilities. In the past, people listened to me. They waited quietly for my advice. When I finished speaking, they had nothing more to say. My words fell gently on their ears. They waited for my words as they would for the rain. They drank them in like rain in the springtime. I smiled at them, and they could hardly believe it. My smile made them feel better. He wraps up that chapter by saying, I was their leader and made decisions about their future. I was like a king among his troops, comforting those who were sad. What a chapter. He starts out chapter 30 this way. But now, men younger than I make fun of me. Men whose fathers were too worthless to put with my sheepdogs. What a change. All these things that he had, all these things that he not only had the material wealth, but he had the personal satisfaction, the wealth of, well, some people may say it's kind of bragging, but if you look into it, he was pleased that he could help these people. He felt he was of worth to people that needed him. But now he says, people younger than me don't even pay attention. And their fathers were useless to begin with. So, just what has Job lost? Well, we can kick it off pretty quickly by saying he's lost his wealth and his children and his reputation. Remember, he's sitting in a dump, scraping swords with a broken piece of pottery. Far from the individual that used to sit with the elders and the elders listened to what he said, he no longer is able to help the poor or the widows or the orphans.
By losing all of his children, he's also lost his legacy.
He's lost his legacy. Remember one of the things that he said? He thought, I thought I was going to grow old with my family. That's gone. Well, let's look at something. Some of the passages talk about his health. We've talked about what he lost, reputation, but here he is sitting on the edge. How bad? I mean, we know the sores, and they just tormented him. This is one of those places where if you want to take a picture of this, this refers to these scriptures, but just compiling them into a list. His skin was covered with painful sores from head to foot. The constant itching has led him to take shreds of broken pottery to scrape himself. His sores, being covered with decomposing organic material, result in production of foul-smelling body odor and crust of earth. His skin, the skin of his body, being at times covered with worms, while at other times it cracked and discharged fluids. His offensive breath drives away his wife, his brothers, and other family members and friends. His nights are either sleepless or filled with dreams and pain. He talks about the fact that he doesn't get any rest during the day, and at night he can't sleep, or when he does, it is too painful. In general, he was weak and alone. In fact, in verse 12 or 20 of chapter 19, he says, I am so thin, my skin hangs loose on my bones, I have little life left in me. He's gone from bad to worse. Now, we can kind of look at this differently because we have the advantage of knowing the outcome. But as far as Job is concerned, this is his future. And isn't that the way we feel sometimes when we really get behind the eight ball, so to speak? We don't know how long this is going to last. Is this a permanent situation? Is this temporary? Let's go back to his friends. This Eliphar is kind of we said he's kind of the leader of the group. We assume anyway. He was the first one to speak, and he is, he started out so good, telling Job how he really was good. But he's the master of backhanded compliments. In chapter 4, he says, you worship God, you trust him. You are a good man. So let that be your hope. Wouldn't it have been great if he had stopped right there? But he goes on, he says, a person, well, no. He says, can you think of any innocent person who was ever destroyed? Do you know of any place where good people are persecuted? He's setting Job up here. Can you think of any innocent person that was punished? He says a person cannot be more right than God. We'll agree with that. People cannot be more pure than their Maker. Look, God cannot even trust the heavenly servants. He sees faults even in the angels. His three friends get together and they say, you are fortunate when God corrects you. Kind of sounds like your parents saying, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. No, I can remember it hurt me. You are fortunate when God corrects you, so don't complain when God all-powerful punishes you. God might injure you, but he will bandage those wounds. He might hurt you, but his hands also heal. Comforting as he's sitting on a pile of ashes, scraping broken pottery across his skin. Now the three friends let him know, we have studied this and know it is true. So listen to us and learn for yourself. So what are they going to tell him? What have they already told him? You know, is it true God blesses the righteous, punishes the evildoer? Is that true? Ultimately. Written well after Job was written, but yet part of the Old Testament and part of what we absorb in our Bible study and our Bible upbringing comes from Psalms 128. Great blessings belong to those who fear and respect the Lord and live the way he wants. You will get what you work for. You will enjoy God, the Lord's blessings, and all will go well for you. All will go well for you. All you have to do is respect and obey. At home, your wife will have many children, like a vine full of grapes. The children around your table will be like an orchard full of olive trees. Yes, the Lord will really bless those who respect him. May the Lord bless you from Mount Zion. May you enjoy the blessings of Jerusalem all your life, and may you live to see your grandchildren. And we've talked about in our study of Psalms that the children of Israel had these memorized. They sang them, they repeated them over, so they knew what this said. So this is the knowledge that Job's friends are trying to lay on him. If you are good, God blesses you. If you are evil, he punishes you. We have the New Testament. While Jesus was walking, he saw a man who had been blind since the time he was born. Jesus' followers asked him, "Teacher, why was this man born blind? Was the sin made it happen? Was it his own sin or that of his parents? Who sinned? Why is this man blind?" What does Jesus say? Jesus answered, it was not any sin of this man or his parents that caused him to be blind. He was born blind so that he could be used to show what great things God can do. Sounds good. But yet, this man, and he is described in the scriptures as a man, has spent his life blind. Was that fair of God to bring this man into the world just to prove a point? Don't you think that man would be upset? I was blind. I didn't have to be blind. What did he do when he got his sight back?
He praised God.
He praised God. He praised God. You know, God made us for a purpose. It's not our, well, let's put it this way, it's not our right to demand to know up front what that person's purpose is.
That man born blind, as Jesus says, so that it would show the power of God. And the easy assumption is so that Jesus would have an opportunity to perform a miracle here. But the miracle of receiving his sight for the first time ever was not nearly as big as the miracle of receiving spiritual life. That God's power had worked to bring to this person for the first time spiritual sight, which Jesus used to contrast with the spiritual blindness of those who've been born seeing.
What did Jesus say about the miracles that he performed while he was here?
A number of things, but mainly that they showed God's power, that they showed that he was from God, they showed that he had the way to life.
So that you would believe.
Yeah.
You know, you live, even us, we are blessed with the fact that we have these scriptures to enlighten us. But it was critical at that point that people saw past the charlatans that were saying that they had powers that they did not have. When Jesus brought Lazarus back to life, I mean, all his family went through the fact that he was dead. So that you would believe. And still today, as we read those, so that we would believe. Peter.
40 years blind so that he could spend eternity seeing.
Right. And so that others could hear the miraculous things that God can do. Peter says, my friends, don't be surprised at the painful things that you are now suffering. Don't be surprised. Why not be surprised? Who else suffered in the New Testament? Jesus suffered, Paul suffered, Peter suffered. All of them suffered for the privilege of following, which are testing your faith. Don't think that something strange is happening to you. James writes, my brothers and sisters, you will have many kinds of, not you might, not you may, but you will have many kinds of trouble. But this gives you a reason to be very happy. You know that when your faith is tested, you learn to be patient in suffering. If you let the patience work in you, the end result will be good. You will be mature and complete. I think some versions say perfect. That's what perfect is, mature and complete. You will be all that God wants you to be. Often compared in the scriptures to the purifying of metals, of gold, has to be purified with fire. Oh, I love this one. Paul writes to the church at Rome, be happy because of the hope that you have. Be patient when you have troubles. Pray all the time. Good times, bad times, pray all the time, but be happy and be patient. Going back to Job, Job gets ready now because he's heard all these things and he's willing to listen. He understands some of them and he wants answers from his friends. He tells them, so now teach me, and I'll be quiet. Show me what I have done wrong. Honest words are powerful, but your arguments prove nothing. Do you plan to criticize me? Will you speak more tiring words? So far, all he's heard from them is just what? Kind of the standard, you must have done something wrong. He said, can you tell me anybody that was innocent that got punished, or any place that was bad and that didn't get blessed? Then he goes on, he said, now look me in the face and see that I am telling the truth. You need to start over and stop being so unfair. Think again, because I'm innocent. I'm not lying. I know right from wrong. This is Job's whole thing. He understands who God is. He's been faithful to God, and he's willing to accept punishment if he's done wrong. But he's waiting for someone to tell him what he did. And we'll see toward the end what that amounts to, because that's the big question. The question, why do innocent people have to suffer? So, what's next? Well, next, chapter number 7, Job's going to go into why he's innocent, why he wants to be taught what he needs to do. He's willing to listen. If I've done something wrong, tell me. I'll change. But I need to know.
Well, also, as God-fearing as he was probably thinking, Lord, I'd love to ask forgiveness, but I need to know what I'm asking forgiveness for.
Yeah, well, that's what he's telling his friends. He's going to go on and he's going to elevate that to a higher level. But right now, he's just telling his friends, if you know, tell me. You've come from afar and you seem to be wise individuals. Tell me what I've done. What have you heard? Next week. Thank you very much.